You are live.
We need to continue our conversation because we really didn't get further into the happiness, like long-term and short-term and all that sort of stuff. But we really do have to hash out sort of our middle names, I think. And now anything goes because we're not like under some sort of like whatever the rules are of radio, but you know.
Oh my God, did I want to curse on that radio show? Oh, did I want to curse on that show?
Thank you for behaving.
I behaved, yeah.
And therefore I did too. So that was good.
And wasn't Gary and Lorraine freaking awesome?
They were awesome. It's like, thanks for taking a segment. Go for it. They were fantastic. It was like perfect, right? In perfect timing. Thanks for Lorraine for hanging on because she, I think, hung on for a couple segments. And great question, because you know the whole idea of even though we get to these different levels of success, we still have those demons and that self-doubt and those questions of being an imposter. But you know, how do you start trusting your gut, really, you know, and allowing yourself not to get pulled in that much deeper? And that's why I was like talking about, you know, when you learn those triggers, you can kind of the tug of war isn't as intense.
Yeah. So Lorraine's question again was sort of the that kind of voice in your head, like as you're growing, right? Like as you're growing, like how do you suppress that gremlin, right, in your head? That and that's such a great question because I've never been able to do it, you know, and I don't know if it ever goes away.
You know, I don't think it goes away because I've had some times where like either it's been a good week or a bad week, or, you know, something transpired in like your local community and it just kind of knocks you off your feet a little bit. But I do think the more that, personally, I'm talking from my experience, the more that I kind of follow my own morning strategies and I follow my own self-care, the more that I do that, the more I'm aware of those triggers. And so I've learned to, when that happens, take a break. Whatever that is, find that reset button, whether it's a message to myself or whether it's, you know what, I'm putting my stuff down, I'm going out for coffee or I'm going for a walk, or, you know what I mean? Just whatever that reset button is. I'm getting on my bike and I'm leaving for an hour, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I thought that was a great thing. By the way, there's all these people saying good morning to you. Jorge is saying good morning.
Good morning, Jorge.
And can you see the screen?
I see it now. Yeah, it's coming above you.
Right on. Right on. So so you wanted to jump on live. I wanted to jump on live with you. Where do we go from here?
Well, you know, one thing we didn't really finish talking about were kind of the forms of happiness. You know, we talked about it a little bit, but I think for those that are listening and if you were still listening, thank you for like giving us your morning. I really appreciate that. But let's talk about that in a way, because I love your perspective on it anyways. Kind of, what are those forms of happiness? What is that, your daily, your long-term? Like, how do you break that down?
Yeah, so I'm glad that we're actually on screen right now, so I don't have to try to walk people through it audio-wise. But like, one of the most simple ways that I learned that there's multiple forms of happiness is by Corey Keyes in Atlanta, Georgia. who is a pioneer in the field of positive psychology. And so, like on the show, I talked about one form of happiness that a lot of people go after, and that's the happiness that has to do with um, being, living in this sort of high purpose, right? So when we live in a very high purpose, that's a cool thing, but it's also a dangerous thing, because when we live in a high purpose, we can often get into this point of what Corey calls striving, where we're giving up our friends, we're giving up, we're going into worker bee mode, we're becoming a workaholic even. And, as a coach, like I'll skimp my lunches out in order to make these free seminars. I'll wake up a little bit earlier to try to get more work in. I'm thinking about bottom lines. And I'm living in purpose because I'm a coach, but also at the same time, like, I'm not getting daily happiness. So there's more Epicurean type of happiness that was out there much earlier, in which it was like, life is about simple pleasures, right? And this is even pre-purpose talk. Right. So life is about simple pleasures. And by simple pleasures, I mean like hedonic happiness. And I'm not talking about the hedonic happiness like when you go to like New Orleans and you pull your shirt over, you show your tatas out, like it's a hedonic happiness where it's like, I want to feel some sort of pleasurable experience right now. It's the dopamine rush in the brain, right? It's the wanting to eat a cookie feeling, not binging on cookies, but it's like, I want a hug from somebody. So that kind of feeling. Now, on the other side, if you do too much of the hedonic happiness, it becomes what we think of hedonism. Right. It becomes the sex, drugs, the rock and roll. And so people who are very high on the hedonism level and low on the purpose level tend to feel like they're settling. They're settling because on a daily basis, they're getting all this money, this pleasure. But in a long-term basis, they're like, there's got to be more to life than this, right? So you've been on my Facebook show. So on my Facebook show, I ask everyone, are you feeling good today? Right. And are you living in your full purpose? So when those two things coalesce and are firing at all cylinders, you have something that looks like this, right? So I don't know if you can see it, but like if this is your full purpose, right? Living at your full purpose with no hedonism is striving.
Okay.
Right? But then also living at your full hedonism without purpose is settling. I don't know if I can see.
I can see it. So I think everyone
can. There you go.
Yeah.
And when the two are firing, we're talking about this like uber form of happiness called flourishing. And you've heard people use the word flourishing and thriving. Right. So that's actually feeling great and living in your full purpose. And when those two things are firing, what people experience is increased joy capacity. Copyright Cordon 2018. The people experience happier relationships. People experience greater job satisfaction. They miss less days of work. So even corporations and organizations need to consider, what are you doing to get your employees to flourish versus getting them to work their asses off 24/7 and be worker bees. Right. What are they doing when they get out of bed and they feel like they're living their full purpose in life? So even organizational development can benefit from this type of strategy. And then on the, for those who are interested, the opposite of flourishing, where you don't feel good and you feel like you don't feel good and you feel like you have no purpose, is languishing. And that's really where the therapy space, the healing space, where someone's in -1 to get them back to 0, getting them back to functioning is very important. So where I work as a coach is not necessarily in the therapy space. I work with someone who's settling for a life where they know something is greater out there, or they're striving and they're like, yo, I gave up all my friends trying to create my coaching business, or they're striving because they're like, I'm making like zero money off of my coaching business. I love it, but like, it's going to kill me if I continue to move like this.
Right. I'm not surviving. And that's sometimes that undervalued too, right? Where people, it's such a interesting balance, I guess I'll say, where people feel like if they're charging, and I went through this for a bit when I started out, like if you charge, you're not really serving. So how do you serve and still charge? And how do you serve and be able to charge and make a living?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where that idea that Alonto gave me, the art of receiving, really comes into play. Like if you're striving and you're not ready to receive, you're only giving and you're not expecting anything in return. It is part of living. It is part of giving, to also be able to be receiving. And that's why it gets so fucked up, is people just only want to give. And then the next thing they know is, I gave 30 years of my life for blah, 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 blah. Well, your motherfucking ass should have expected to receive something instead of being angry right now.
Right.
Oh my God. This is so already the opposite of what you wanted to do.
There we go.
Right? Yeah, I'm
and
so
we're
happy.
coming out. We're coming out.
It's coming out. The claws are coming out, you know?
Right.
So in many ways, like, anger is part of that whole thing when someone realizes they've been striving for a long period of time. But then that idea that we talked about on your radio show, that agency, not waiting for the knight in shining armor, not waiting for something to change, actually changing your belief and then taking action, activating a bold choice is where things need to go. So yeah.
Sharon just said, that's awesome.
Yeah. So Sharon, like, I agree with you. I mean, you're finally learning to receive and the floodgates are like opening.
Isn't that amazing? It happens though, right? You feel like you're allowing yourself to do this. And I think in a way, there's a self-consciousness to that, but suddenly everybody feels that. I think everyone knows that balance then, and everyone's like, we want to work with you. We want to be with you because you're giving that balance. You're giving that right energy off. And
and Sharon, I wanted to invite you, like, if you want to come and talk about that a little bit more, like, this is not Golden Mike. This is the post show for Activate Bold Choices, the radio show that Robin hosts. So like, if you want to come on and talk a little bit more about it, like, please jump on board. There's the link. I just want to hear what you have to say. Same thing with you, Madden. Madden, good to see you in here. You know, great insight. So the link is up there. Tell us what's going on. We're not on a 30-second censor like the
that's right.
Like right.
You're allowed to curse.
I feel like we're on serious radio now, right?
Anything goes.
Yeah. So I think that was the piece on the show. We talked about, striving, right? But also at the same time, there's a piece about like settling as well. If you go too far the other way, you end up settling. What link? I'm going to send you, Sharon, I'm going to send you the link personally. So you can, if you want to hop on and talk to us, please do.
That would be awesome. Come on, Sharon. Hope to see you.
So why do you go by Robin Joy on your show?
I knew that had to come out. All right, so this is what all of you need to know. My middle name is Joy, right? I'm really going to get real here, actually. So I'm going to like spew my whole life story to you. I never liked my middle name. I never did. Like Joy, who names their kid Joy, right? I never did. But here's probably why I didn't like it. And Mark, try and control your laughter. Just try.
I don't know if I can.
I know. Well, go for it. So I had two older brothers, and my grandfather, and I swear this is probably why they named it Joy, my middle name Joy, because it rhymes with boy, I guess, came up with the poem, Robin Joy, we're so glad you're not a boy. Now, if that doesn't mess up your head at some point in your life, nothing will. So that's probably why I never liked my middle name.
So why did you choose it for the show?
I know. So, okay. So, so all of a sudden, I've decided to embrace my middle name because when I wrote my book, Alone But Not Lonely, Robin Meyers, I think there's a priest, Robin Meyers. There's several Robin Meyers out. And so when I put Robin J. Meyers is too long. And so when I put Robin Joy Meyers, everybody started to really compliment like my name and with my purpose, like how wonderful that is. And talk about trying to receive that. That was a little hard, but I was like, okay, it's growing on me. I'll be a big girl and it's growing on me. And then as the radio show started to develop, actually through the whole development of the radio show, it wasn't until the week before, they're like, so your middle name is Joy? Like they saw my book and they're like, why don't we know that? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't share that.
Like the radio producer?
The radio producer. Why didn't we know that? And so
did he have like a big old cigar in his mouth? Like I'm thinking like, why is your name Joy, girl? It's going to make you look a lot sexier, girl.
Yeah, maybe it is sexy. I don't know.
Sell your soul to the devil, girl. I don't know. I don't know why I have that weird image in my mind.
I don't know. I don't know, Mark. Is something you want to talk about? I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyways,
like old school mentality of radio producers.
Exactly. Anyways, they said, would you use Robin Joy? But Robin Joy Meyers is long, and Robin Joy is a great radio and stage name. And I was like, okay. So I've embraced Robin Joy.
Well, there you have it. I think it sounds great. And I told you last night, I think you need to put Dr. Robin Joy. Dr. Robin Joy is fucking awesome.
All right, I'll get new glasses and like a lab coat or something under it, or
that's like awesome. That's awesome. That is awesome. Sharon, I sent you the link just in case you want to jump on with us. So so this was like second show. Was I okay as a guest?
Oh my God, you were fantastic. You were fantastic. Can you come on every week, please?
That was like the fastest hour ever.
It was really fast, wasn't it? And
it was
timing
really fast.
So the way the show works, everybody, is it's 6 segments. The first 5 segments are 8 minutes, and then the last segment's 4.5 or something like that. And it goes really fast. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't ask for anything better.
Well, you want to know something even better?
What?
Sharon is logging in. All I see is a blue screen with you, Sharon. So I think, Sharon, are you there? Boom! Sharon is on.
I don't see her.
Here she comes.
Well, I see something happening.
Boom!
Wow.
Sharon.
Hey, Sharon.
Hey guys, wait, you're kind of, I have to stop. I have to pause.
So I think, Sharon, are you there? Boom!
I'm like hearing you in the background here. Hi guys!
Hi Sharon.
I'm prepared for this. This is like I'm still in my workout clothes.
Freaking awesome.
Awesome.
This is freaking awesome.
Doesn't matter.
Robin, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you.
Robin and I know each other from Tricia's salon, speaker salon. And now the two of you together.
Gosh.
Like, hey guys, so good to see both of you.
So you guys know each other.
Yes.
That's so funny.
Yes, and how about that?
Was it Kristina Hallett?
What?
Yes.
Was it Kristina Hallett that introduced all three of us?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
We have to give her a shout out.
Yay,
Hey,
Kristina.
Yeah.
Kristina's going to be on the show next week.
Oh my gosh.
On the radio. My show.
That's so cool. Wow, guys. Well,
When is Sharon going to be on?
Sharon, we have to talk.
I'm now officially your booking agent.
You do that.
Right. We'll talk about your commission after. Talk about the kickback after.
There you go.
And Mark, I'm on your show next month. So very
You
excited.
are. I can't wait. I can't wait.
This is so cool how this all works. And I love what you're talking about because it so resonates with me. And it's not a coincidence that I just happen to put, I'm usually not on Facebook in the morning. And it's like, gotta say hello to my friends here.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I love your comment, though. You know?
That's
Yeah,
what I was saying.
Go, Mark.
And what's resonating? I mean, we've really been just kind of riffing this morning, and so I'm curious.
Well, I think that's when the magic happens, when you're just riffing and there's nothing scripted, right? And just the conversation, talking about our blockages of we give, and that's our natural state, is to want to, and somebody wants to pay you, you're like, oh no, it's okay, don't worry about it, and then you're like, can I use language, or can I? Is this?
It's too late.
Oh no, it's fine.
We're on Sirius XM. Yeah, exactly.
There's no bleep.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what the fuck? Come back here, pay me.
Right. Yeah.
And it's that feeling of, and I've been working on this for years and years and years, and it's really just in this last year for myself that it's like the actual putting the intention out there of receiving, that it's okay, that I'm worth it and I deserve it just as much as they deserve my help. I deserve to receive also. And it's uncomfortable, right? It's really uncomfortable to do that. But when it does, man, I'm telling you, these floodgates are opening. It's like, why didn't I do this sooner? What was I thinking?
Yeah. Well, I think, there's so many things that we're programmed to do, right? Like, so I came from the social justice movement, and in doing social justice work, you're often like, I thought that I'm doing it as a passion project, and there's no way I can make money on it. And if I make money on it, I'm selling out. Right. What I also realized in taking that mentality to the coaching space was that, like, if I undersell myself, I severely don't show up. Like, I just don't show up energetically for my client. And so that kind of interaction where you are not only giving and receiving at the same time, you feel the freedom, and you feel that level of purpose, like, increase. Does that make sense, Sharon and Robin?
It does. It totally makes sense.
Yeah. And you're right. And then when that happens, more opportunities come in. Things just start to flow because now you're in that vibration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing, and you're like, it's like a ripple effect, right? It's just amazing. I don't have any other words except that it's just this wow factor of feeling so good and knowing you're doing good and allowing it all to flow. And it wasn't flowing. So it's like you need it to flow for it to keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
How was it that you got from a point where it was hard for you to, like, receiving was something that was a blockage, to the point where you see yourself growing into it? Like, how did that become a part of your awareness?
I don't think it was any one thing. I think it was just the consistent practice of allowing it and just a little bit more, and then finally realize, and then actually having a couple of friends who became clients say to me, I know what your time is worth. Like, don't just give this to me, or don't, like, I want to pay for your time. Because I think that's the hardest thing also when you start working with friends who really want to start using your services, and you just want to help them. So that helped me get more comfortable with it, and then offering them a friends and family discount, of course, because I want to, and that's okay, but just feeling comfortable with that. So yeah, it's just been a practice, and now I'm cool. Now I'm just like, okay, this is what it is, guys.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah. But thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Let's all just chat. Anybody else? Come on. Come on. The party. Yeah, we were talking too about the comfortable and getting uncomfortable, and what is that balance, and allowing yourself not to get complacent, like all those words together. Where do you, because no matter what level, like as you're growing, right, as we're all growing, there's still always that challenge to keep going. Amy just said you're worth all success, you have value. Yay, Amy. That's my It's like everybody, I have these bands, right? Know your work.
I got yeah.
Do you have one of these, Sharon?
I do.
What is it?
There are these bracelets by Leclay, this like fabric that the woman had made for me with my book, so I've been giving it away. But are you going to be at Salon the fall?
Yeah.
I'll bring them.
Awesome.
So when you turn it over, it's called a refocus band, but it's knowing your worth. So
I like that. That's awesome.
I'll bring them. So
cool. Very cool. So yeah, it's true. It's just that self-worth and the feeling of deserving. And we grow up and, Mark, you too, but I don't know. Do you think that it's like a female thing versus a male thing of, we're just so conditioned to being these caregivers and think that, we don't deserve and we're not worthy. And
what's your take, Mark? That's a great question, because I deal with women mainly, except in the business community. And to talk about it as a woman, it's true. We care and we raise the kids or whatever, and we care and kind of put ourselves last. But what about the girl guy thing? Venus, Mars, whatever.
I see. This is the thing: is I don't have any experience being a girl, and so I just have observation with my own experience, right? And I can wax a lot of gender theory right now, but I also have experience coming from a collectivist background, where in the collectivist background you put yourself in the group. Like the group is more important than your individual self, and serving that group is more important. So in many ways, that's where I can relate to someone putting the group or somebody else first, right? I know I had a guest on the show earlier in the week that really talked. She's called the menopause guru, Joanne, and she came in and she talked about the genetics of specifically of the tribe mentality, when men would go out and hunt and then women would come back, and the sole purpose was to raise families. And so in many ways that kind of pattern is still being moved forward in the brain. And so I do think that it's really interesting that you see a lot of people coming of age after a lot of people have left the nest, and it's like, okay, I'm divorced, like my kids are grown up, they can feed themselves now, and now I've got this opportunity to take care of myself. And what does that look like? And it can be completely disruptive, right? It can be completely disruptive because the whole idea was to serve other people your whole life.
That's my
right?
life.
Right?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. And so I do think that based on the guests that I've had on the show, like they're much more they're much more higher experts than I would ever say. But I do think that anyone who comes in with an energy of service can think about the energy of receiving. Michelle just said that's a her too. Michelle, if you want to jump on the show, we got a seat for you. We got a warm seat for you. Gary Fleming.
Come on,
back.
Gary.
Gary, let's see your face. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
Gary,
I don't know if that makes sense, Sharon. I don't know if it makes sense.
I guess also just in terms of male female, do you feel as a male and your male friends and people who are entrepreneurs and who are in this service business, that it's easier for a guy to be like, oh yeah, these are my fees and I'm helping you, but it's X dollars. Whereas women are like, well, let me help you, and don't pay me, or it's okay, kind of.
Yeah.
Mentality.
Well, I have to admit, I think things are easier for men because of male privilege. So I own it. I know that there's things that I'm unaware of because I walk around and I'm ignorant to my male privilege at times. But is it easier as a man? I don't know if it's easier as a man. I grew up in a household where my mom is the alpha, so I saw her commanding the prices and stuff. My dad was the beta, so like it might be a little ass backwards of me, but that's also what I look for in like people. I don't like seeing beta in anybody. I always like alphas. So I don't know. I think it's easier for men because of male privilege, just simply put, you know, and you know, I think it's easier for men to step in and be like, you know, I can be alpha, blah, 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 blah. I can raise my rates. I could command this. And then when, you know, oftentimes when you see someone who is not of the same form of an alpha, people are like, who does this person think they are? You know, and that's often where we feel imposter syndrome. So I've never felt imposter syndrome as a man, but I felt imposter syndrome as a non-white person. Does that make any sense?
Interesting.
So interesting.
Jinx.
Oh, Gary Fleming is joining.
Come on in.
Yeah.
That's really interesting you said that, though, because I know with women, so I guess part of the question feeding off of Sharon is kind of the guilt and the self-doubt, but the guilt of putting ourselves first. You know, there was a study that I remember seeing of, I want to say there was maybe 20 or 30 millennials in a room, and it was applying for a job. And I think there were 10 lists, it was a list of 10 criteria on the job. And the women only could check, no one checked more than 4 out of the 10. And only one woman applied. In a different room, the guys only checked them probably the same amount, and 9 out of 10 applied. You know, and it's kind of that mentality of maybe it's the alpha, maybe it's, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that guy thing. I don't know. You know, where why not just go for it? And I was actually working with a client the other day, and she's trying to change kind of careers and decide what she wants to do. And she was looking at a great thing, but was caught up on her education. And she's my age. She's in her 50s. And I was like, I don't really think they're going to care about college back when you graduated in 1986. You know, look at your life skills and what you've done. And she's like, but I haven't led a team. I'm like, you've been leading teams for a very long time. Like, how do you reframe that and change your brain, you know?
The whole perception, shifting that, and just realizing your perspective is based on all these beliefs that we've been raised with, and not realizing that we have to question them. And when like, why do I believe that? Where'd that come from? Many times we don't have the answer, and it's just like, oh, wait, so I can actually do something about it.
Right, like nobody said that. It's not a law, it's not a rule. Nobody put that in stone.
Right. You know, last night I went to see Jason Mraz in, oh my God, he was a wordsmith. He performed at Center Stage in Central Park, and I was listening to his words for the first time, being present, just being there and listening to him and his words. And he was saying part of his words in many of his songs, but it was like, I am just spirit playing through my body, and that the love that we have, it's all about, I mean, the words that were coming out of this guy's mouth, I was like, holy shit. Like, this guy is like, he gets it. He just gets it, and he's delivering this message. And I really wonder how many people listen and are really paying attention to that guidance system that's in them. It was just amazing. It's a wonder, like you're saying, you know, we're just like, it's growing and evolving and learning and getting uncomfortable and moving forward with all of that. It's like, I feel like I'm in my 50s and this is like the best time of my life.
Me too. No, actually, me too. You know, what's today? Friday? Friday. Tomorrow's my birthday, actually.
Happy birthday.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. And I've never been so happy to turn 50. I mean, I'm turning 54. I guess happy to turn it. You only turn it once. But I'm like happy. Like, I'm out of this 53 thing. So I made it. I didn't die. That's good. And, but I'm like, this is cool. Like, come on, 54. Yeah. I'm good.
So what are you doing? Are you going to a Jason Mraz concert and you're going to body?
I wish.
Are we all getting new matching tattoos, everybody?
Oh yeah, baby. Yeah. My collection.
Let's do it.
And everybody is wishing you a happy birthday, Stephanie.
Thank
Michelle.
you. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you. But
And Gary Fleming, get your ass in here. Uh-oh, Gary Fleming's coming up.
uh-oh.
Gary Fleming, you look like Max Headroom. Like there's some sort of like weird time warp going on, but you're coming on the show. What is going on? Are you coming to us from the 80s?
It's like Back in the Future or something. Look at him. He's like all floating here.
I'm seeing the world through rainbow glasses.
Yeah, your energy is so wild right now that it's like fucking up the internet.
My aura is just.
Oh my God, did you see that? As soon as he went like this,
Your colors left.
Yeah. Well, Gary, I think you've been listening in the background, Gary. Like, I know when you were on the Robin show, you were asking the same thing when it came to service. So like, what is your take on that when you were waiting to get on? Because we talked about service from the standpoint of male, female, but like I picked up on the show that like you're heavy into service. Like that's a big part of your identity.
Defining that, it has really kind of evolved over the last several months and kind of following Robin's journey. And when you said the male-female dynamic, it was interesting because in my career life, I've been in two very polar opposite places. I worked for a car rental company that was predominantly male driven, old boy network, really hardcore, men were considered confident and assertive if they were, really pushing back, and women were considered bitches, honestly. I had a manager that went to some construction guys to ask them to stop drilling while we were servicing customers. And he said, well, honey, why don't you go get your manager? And she turned around and started walking away. She goes, oh, wait. And she turned back and goes, I'm the manager. Please leave.
I like her.
I loved it, but it was just so male dominated. Now I'm in a early childhood industry where I'm a regional manager and work with primarily women. So it's a very women dominated. Yeah. So it's a really interesting contrast. And to your point about service is, as a manager, I've always tried to instill in my employees that idea of service, gratitude, humility. Don't be afraid to apologize, because the bottom line will grow if we have people coming back because of how we engage with that customer. So the things that I try to drive at are maintaining that authenticity, but still trying to drive the bottom line. And that gets very seesaw depending on who my superiors are and what their expectations are. My big analogy is it's a hamster wheel, and sometimes the hamster wheel goes slow, and sometimes the hamster wheel is a Cuisinart. And how do we step off?
I hope it's not a bloody Cuisinart.
Well, some days it is, right? Sometimes you feel that way.
Ouch.
But how do you step off that and still maintain, who you are, and still wearing those hats that I referred to earlier on Robin's broadcast?
Wow.
Okay, Mark, you go for it.
Go for what?
It's just, and that's been my struggle in terms of my self-identity, quote unquote. It is being a leader and being able to keep who I am and adjust to the other people's expectations of what their perception of a leader is, or what their perception of a strong manager is. And if those things don't coincide, then it becomes career conflict, and then all the other things come into place. As a parent, how do I provide? So it's just that constant juggernaut of expectations, and how do you keep who you are?
Yeah. Have you guys read The Go-Giver?
Mm-hmm.
No, I haven't.
It's a business leadership book. We can literally read it in like 2 hours, and it has like the 5 key principles. And basically, it's about this guy who works for a company, and it's the end of the quarter's coming up, and he hasn't met his quota. And it's like, how can I get so-and-so and this person, that person, how can I get their business? It's all about how can I get for me? And he ends up being taught by a leader for 5 or 6 consecutive days, a different lesson that he has to apply each day in his personal life or his business life. And he's trying to wrap his head around what that means. And it's really about giving, being of service, and how when you open up to do that and shift your perspective first, others will shift with it because of the way you approach things. It's a great read. A little kitschy, but just really great. Even my son, who's 27, read it, and he got a lot of value out of it because he works for some Google.
Okay.
I definitely recommend it. Mark, what did you think about the book?
I thought it was a really great book. I mean, I read it right when I became a coach, and so I read it with like these. I think there was another book that came with it. You know, when Amazon like couples books together and like
you
think you're saving money, and then you think you're saving money, but then you end up spending like $100 on like books when you just wanted a $5 book. Oh, Amazon. So it was coupled with that. I thought it was a great book on seriously just putting yourself out there. I still think that there's the next level is continuing to receive, because going out and having that mentality of putting others first has always been a mentality of mine. Like I always used to do this thing. I used to roll burritos. Like that's why I have this tattoo, because I have so many scars from the burrito heaters, right? That I was like, oh, it's not pretty. So let's put something even more ugly on there, right? So like, when I became I'm like Dwight Schrute. When I became assistant to the regional manager, right? I had a small team that I would train. And so when people would come in, I would count down. Like I was like that manager. I'd be like, okay, so you let 30 seconds walk by before you even greeted everybody. Like when you're in my store, you give your first 30 seconds to the client or the customer, and then you take the last 30 seconds for yourself. Well, that type of mentality is like, put everybody first, and then the last 30 seconds of your life, you get to live by you get to then claim it. And so I think the next level of thinking is, how can we create a win-win situation when someone is coming in and you're giving to them and they're giving back to you? And that's the mentality. And I think that if you're in the constant mentality of giving, you're going to burn the fuck out. And I don't think the Go-Giver has that. The Go-Giver has a lot of like self-protection tactics. Like it's like, don't open your heart so that people can reach in and stomp on it, like type of stuff, and it's really cool.
Right.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think it is a nice primer in receiving and giving.
Yeah. I think, Gary, because of just like what you're talking about with the treadmill and the Cuisinart, and all I can see now is a bloody Cuisinart. I'm sorry.
It's a metaphor. The hamster's safe.
My Cuisinart away.
I just see the hamster wheel going and flying into the Cuisinart now and just grinding. So, thanks, Gary.
I've never met you before, but thanks.
Glad I could add something of value.
Now you can't forget. So.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Sorry, guys. Let me just. I don't know why I'm connected to my computer. Hey.
There's a quote that I actually put in my book by Earl Nightingale. Most people tiptoe through life hoping we safely make it into death. I love that thing. Think about it, though. We do. We walk like a safe course sometimes until we wake up and we're like, nah, we're not doing that anymore.
That is freaking awesome right there. That is freaking awesome. I'm going to have to write that down. That it does. I mean, there's a quote that really drove the book that I wrote. That I feel, where is it? Oh, by Henry David Thoreau. That's very similar. That it says, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. From the desperate city, you go into the desperate country and have to console yourself with the bravery of minks and muskrats. A stereotyped but unconscious despair is concealed underneath what are the games and amusements of mankind. So like we conceal all our shit, and there is no play in them, for this comes after work. But it is a characteristic of wisdom not to do desperate things. And so it's just all about like status quo and stuff, and everyone knew it. Like Henry David Thoreau knew it. Like I think that's why he like went to the woods for so long. And Earl Knight, like all these brilliant writers have been talking about it for years, but then when you actually go through the experience, it's fucked up.
Well, and Mark, that brings to mind a quote from one of my favorite authors, Hunter.
Yeah, we're going around the horn with the quotes.
You like Hunter S. Thompson? He wrote, life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride. That's a little more, just that's a very descriptive way of putting, but that one stuck with me because that's an everyday.
Exactly. You better get on the description.
It's not that it's a favorite, but one quote that I love is Albert Einstein's. I don't remember exactly, so I'm going to probably mess it up a little, but you can't change a situation from the same consciousness that created it.
Such a good quote.
Yeah.
Right? And that's all, it's kind of what we're talking about here today,
Yep.
In terms of that. It's like if you give, it's just, you got to shift that consciousness so that you can change it. Otherwise, you're on that hamster wheel hitting the Cuisinart.
Okay, so
great outside, but it's just getting right in there.
So I have to throw this in here. Can we actually
pour out the Bloody Mary?
Y'all, speaking of Bloody Marys, can we actually turn this into like a regular show? And whenever the four of us like do like a quote waterfall, everyone who's watching has to like drink.
I thought we should have Bloody Marys this morning or something, but I'm glad we didn't after that comment.
Oh, we can make it one of those. What's that guy from the Bravo series who does the? Oh my God!
Behind the Actor Studios.
Frederick, the house guy.
The guy who he does the 11 o'clock where he has guests on, and it's like, and if you see this word, then take a drink.
Andy Cohen. Andy Cohen.
Yeah. Now
I like Bravo.
At 11 o'clock at night.
There we go.
Ramses is laughing his ass off, so I guess Ramses is drinking with us right now.
Come on, man.
Come on. There's no more room, but like we'll find a way to get everybody on one day. Like this is absolutely brilliant.
Oh my
just
God.
be randomly meeting people like this.
Awesome.
This is awesome. So Gary, we're gonna throw this question out that Sharon and I try to get Mark to answer, the guy-girl thing. Do you think it's, now that you work really with all women, I guess, right? Do you think that it's a guy's mentality? Obviously, this Mars Venus thing, I know that. And I'm probably setting myself up for like a firing line at the moment. But do you think that women overanalyze? No, that's a bad word. No, do you think that? Yeah.
I was like,
we tend to be more of the caregivers, I think, right? Unless you're a sensitive guy, I guess. Do you feel that it's in our nature to deal more with the self-doubt or having issues trying to take a compliment, or like, do you guys find it easier to receive a compliment than women do?
Wow. If I go by my career experience, where I was in a testosterone-based environment with the car rental place, and
Did he just freeze?
Yeah.
I'm glad I had that impact on him.
You know what you're doing.
wow,
We know
okay,
what you're doing.
That's a perfect example where the man starts talking and then they hit pause. So I just completely I had a brilliant thought out there and you missed it. Sorry.
And that's my take on all of this.
And that's it. And the mic drops.
Example. Now, it's such a different mechanic. But when I was in with the rental car company, men took it as a very stoic, like, yo, yeah, I know. And women, it's much more emotion based. In that all boys club, it's a fist bump. That's a compliment. The high five is a compliment. It's taken for granted that if you're not getting dinged, then you're being promoted. Emotionally. Whereas where I am now, the discussion around one compliment is much more intricate. It's just really interesting. I met some great people in the rental car business, but I also met those hard-nosed frat boys who felt like the only way they're going to promote their career is by stepping on, or being crass or vulgar. That was that old boy mentality, or college mentality. We're here, in the early childhood industry, it's all compassion based. It's all education based. So it's a much more delicate way of communicating. And my challenge as kind of the business leader in this, not the education leader, but trying to get them to understand the business components of that, embracing it, but being purposeful as they go through that with their own employees. So I've managed directors of schools, and getting them to understand that, yes, the education and compassion, that's all part of our business, but the business aspect has to be integrated into that. And how do we do that with humility and compassion, but still, we have a responsibility to drive that bottom line. And you get a lot of eye rolling, and I can say, wow, great job at hitting your numbers, for instance. And they might roll their eyes and be like, no, it's good, because now we look at your customer service ratings or your employee engagement ratings. Those are the things that are driving the bottom line. And that's been kind of a new concept over the last, when I first came into this industry, was, oh, it's not he's not focused on the bottom line, or he's focused on it coincidentally, is just do things you're doing. And if we do them well and consistently, the bottom line is going to grow. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just been a really interesting, contrast of those two industries. One thing I can say from a male-female perspective in terms of those environments is, at the rental car place, it was very sensitive that we had to be sensitive to our female counterparts, which I totally agree with. You couldn't get away with stereotypes. You couldn't get away with, and rightfully so, making stereotypical, female remarks. Whereas in this industry, people get up and they'll give presentations, and they might put a picture of shirtless Brad Pitt in whatever context that they were using it, and then they'll, after fact, turn to me and say, because I'll be the one male in a room full of 100 women, and they'll say, well, you know what we mean, Gary. It's kind of interesting, to a certain degree, the double standard. And those are two extremes, where it's just taken for granted that, well, he's a guy, he'll get it, versus the male dominated environment where, hey, there's a female in the room. From an HR standpoint, we have to be extremely delicate in how we're communicating. So that's
nowadays you do.
Well, and more so, yes. So it's very interesting.
So you have like the reverse discrimination now.
Yeah, and I don't come from it from a discriminatory standpoint. It's a social standpoint. It's I just don't think like that from a discriminatory, unless someone's blatantly saying you're a guy, you wouldn't get it, and that's not the case at all. It's just a perception of more casual acceptance. Versus if we have a discussion about how females are treated in the workplace, and there's a definite point to that, as I saw with the car rental business. We all knew people knew where not to go, but in private or at a party or after hours, it was a much different mentality. So it's been a really interesting run.
Yeah. I would just interject with that and just say, why am I hearing myself?
I hear you twice too.
Oh, okay. Like the idea of, I don't know if I necessarily buy in fully into the reverse discrimination piece, because I think that there's a certain obligation that folks who have power and privilege recognize that they have power and privilege. But also at the same time, folks are like, oh, you get it. That's also an opportunity to educate as well. Like, I don't think that it's not necessarily fair to be like, not all men are like that, because not all men are like that. Yes, we get it. But also as a person who is male identified, I also have an obligation to recognize my own power and my own privilege that I have. And I think walking around ignorantly saying, well, I didn't grow up like that. I understand. And if I want to be a part of not only being an ally, but also standing my ground, I have to be compassionate to every side of things. And that's hard, right? Because I get pissed off quite a bit. I'm the angriest happiness guy you'll ever meet. I say it all the time, right? But I also think that that's a great opportunity there to sit down and be like, well, where do we move forward? Because technically we're kind of on the same page, but I don't know how to move out forward. So like, can we work together on this to exponentially create change, right? Or aliens will show up and that will be our common enemy. And, you know, then the future is now. But I think there's an opportunity at a time where we're really disrupted right now to be us versus them.
Totally. There's a hypersensitivity.
Yeah.
Of like, well, we have to go to that nth degree, but it's like, no, we don't. It's just a discussion.
No. Yeah. Yeah. You know, you guys know what I'm saying, though.
Uh-huh. Sure.
You ladies know what Gary and I are talking about.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, Mark. Fist bump.
Wait. Robin,
Sharon.
That's a compliment. That's a compliment, bro.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, bro. Yeah, bro.
Oh, boy.
Interesting what you said, Gary. I was like, one thing caught my attention about when you're like talking with the women and how they roll their eyes. And I notice this so much with my clients, and especially when it comes to health and things that we do over and over again because we just approach things. We think we're doing it differently, but we're doing it the same way. Is that, and I think this is for men and women. We get down on ourselves if something's not going right, and we forget to focus on what is going right. And
That's true.
So many times, a lot of things are actually going well, but if one thing goes wrong, whatever it is in any of our businesses, that's it. Like it's like you become anxious and depressed and miserable and cranky and whatever.
Yes.
Both hands.
Yeah.
You know, we Mark and I were talking about that. Yeah, we were talking about that. I think last night about getting down on yourself, like that one thing. And actually, even today on the show, it was that on the radio, it was that one thing that could cycle you down. You know, all the successes, and then you have that one block. And how do you get yourself out of that and start learning those triggers so you get out of it a little bit faster? But yeah, we do that very well.
Well, and Robin, that really speaks to my question on your broadcast was how do you receive the advice well? You know, because you do get in your own head and somebody gives you advice and you're like, well, it makes sense, but emotionally I'm not there, and that, you know, I'm not going to get there quick enough, and it pisses me off. And in my job, my schools that I cover are in other states, so it's a very solitary. You know, when I go into the schools, it's all business. You know, and there's not a casual relationship there. It's a friendly relationship. And then through my own personal experiences now, you know, I'm pretty solitary, but, you know, I'm living alone. All my friends have young kids, so I don't have a lot of access to that. So I'm constantly in my head, to your point, Sharon. That's why I was like clicking them off. On a bad day, I'm walking around my apartment on a conference call, like just, you know, going over the things that I've failed at, or I'm doing poorly, or feel I'm doing poorly because I'm not getting feedback. And that was why I posed that question, because I get great advice, you know, when I hear your podcast, Mark, or I'm talking with Robin, and, you know, getting involved in some of the coaching seminars in Raleigh. I'm like, how do I get out of my own way? You know, and to those points, it's really difficult when you don't have a close social circle to vent those out. So you're venting to yourself, and it's, you know, you're arguing with yourself, you know, and sometimes that negative voice is really crushing that little positive squeak that occasionally surfaces after a bottle of wine.
Yeah, well, I think, Gary, I think this is where, you know, we as humans are hardwired to be social creatures. And so that emotional piece is really like, you know, our minds are wired to help us move forward and develop all these things, but our emotions and our intuition are really sort of that whole purposeful living. Like we existed in tribes in order to survive, right? And so that's how we've evolved. That's why we're thinking about, we call it purpose nowadays. They didn't have a name for it back then. It was just, what is your role in the tribe? And I think what's going on right now, like this natural tribe that has just formed in like the past hour, is a nice example that like we are not meant to be solitary creatures. And so like I feel like a much more confident person, like vibing with this common energy, like vibing with my tribe, and I would contend to say that like we should keep this going, because oftentimes we are like in our apartments by ourselves making decisions and doing things, and then we'll sit down with the wine and be like, okay, I'm second guessing myself like crazy. But then when we're around folks, like, and they're giving us feedback and they're giving us compliments and we're receiving all of it, then that's where true wormholes are created, and we can speed up everything we've ever wanted in our life. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there. Like,
awesome,
it's not just this woo-woo thing, but like this thing that's built in our head.
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even just the fact, like I said, happening to get on Facebook and seeing that you guys are talking, and there's something to be said when you a like attracts like, the energy attracts each other, right? The vibration's there, and then when it's so easy and comfortable, you start to ideas spark from there. I mean, Mark, when you and I first spoke, it was like how long were we on that call for? It was just like
a long time. We're on the and that like we're texting each other now all the time, right?
Yeah, it's just like
so,
shit, Yeah. And it's great. And hey, I'm all for continuing all of this.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, what city are we meeting in? Yeah, everybody drink. What city are we all meeting in?
Let's see. You're where? Florida?
I'm in Tampa.
You're in Tampa. Sharon, you're in New York.
New York. Gary?
You're Raleigh.
I'm North Carolina, Raleigh.
Robin,
I'm outside of DC, Northern Virginia. Let's not meet here. It's okay, but I'll come to you guys.
Well, I mean, we can always do a B&B on the beach down in Florida. New York is always fun. If you don't want us to do DC, we don't have to.
Oh, you can. You can.
I'm in the city in Pensacola a lot.
Oh, Pensacola. Yes. All right. So that's right there. And December, I'm going to be in North Carolina. For it's not Raleigh, it's Charlotte.
Okay,
Charlotte far?
Yeah,
what are you doing in Charlotte?
2.5 hours from
so I just bought my I just bought my coaches these tickets to go to a really advanced selling program for coaches, and also like life-changing stuff, like vision questing stuff. What's his name? His name is David Neagle. Unbelievable guy. So maybe if y'all want to meet there down in North Carolina, we can pop down there December.
That would be awesome.
12th through 14th.
I actually would do that. My girlfriend lives down there. Her and her family. I haven't seen them in years.
Oh my God, this is the best.
I would fly down there.
Let's commit while the dopamine is high right now. Let's commit. Let's show the Facebook community what happens. This is what
happens when you.
This is like the new real world, right? When people stop being polite and start getting real.
Hey, I'm an
old MTV show.
I'm a New Yorker.
I'm a New Yorker by heart.
I'm direct. What the shit that comes out of my mouth, like it or not, that's it.
I'm a New Yorker by heart. Good. Okay, let's do it.
I grew up in Jersey, so I'm close.
Okay. Michelle Madden said, email me. I'm in Delaware.
Come on down, Michelle. Sharon will pick you up.
We have a question. I have a question that came in from Ramses. Ramses says, what do you think about emotions in the workplace? This, I think, affects both men and women differently. Men may not express because of the fear of being emasculated. Is it emasculated or whatever? And women may feel like they are perceived as weak, say, in a male-dominated career. How can everyone contribute to reconciling this in the workplace? Ramses,
that's
wow.
a great question.
And Ramses is in Buffalo. We might have a mini conference, guys.
We have a tour that we need to put together here.
Seriously, I love it. I think
let's do it.
I say we just do we all meet in one city and we all have dinner and we just have a good time. We just chill and talk.
I think we need to start Michelle, like at 10 a.m. though.
Yeah, we need to start.
Yeah, because look at how long we're on this right now. It's going to be more than a dinner. This needs to be a whole day thing.
It's going to be a whole day thing. What do y'all think about Ramses' questions there? That's super insightful.
It's really interesting because I've been dealing with a company actually, and the women are incredibly powerful. They're leaders in big divisions. It's a big company, Fortune 500, yet they do deal with the same sort of issues of imposter syndrome or self-doubt and not feeling, but the difference is they feel like they can't show the emotion because of the male-dominated company, because then they'll be perceived as weak. So
emotion in what way? Like, how does that actually appear in the workplace? Because there's different levels of emotion. Like, obviously you're not going to start crying in front of your counterparts, right? Because that's like really emotional. So I think it also depends on like the definition of like what type of emotion is acceptable and what can be shown. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. Ramsey, come back. Come back and tell us what you want. Yeah, but the idea too of even if you were having an off day, or a sales call didn't go the way you planned, or the meeting you ran wasn't 100%, feeling that weakness, or I guess incompetence or something like that, not that you're incompetent, but feeling that weakness of you didn't perform as to the perceived level that you should have, and you're a woman in that environment. That's what I've seen going on right now. But
well, for me in my previous life, vulnerability was seen as a weakness. Yeah. In a male-dominated workforce, especially for males, it was like, again, fist bumps. You suck it up. You soldier through. If women showed vulnerability or emotion, it was, well, that's because they're a woman, right? Right. Which that comes from an education standpoint. That organization was very young. We were, a lot of people were being hired straight out of college. In my current situation, vulnerability is seen as a strength. It's a predominantly female-oriented or female workplace. So when you're talking about something hard, or especially when it comes to children, there's a lot of tears. A child gets hurt, or a child's having behavioral problems, it becomes very emotional, and trying to weed through, the compassion, empathy to, well, what's our plan of action, and still being able to do that with compassion and not being like, well, we need to be very delicate here. Yes, we do. So going through that, and I think to, Ramsey's point, it's about education and transparency. It's, being able to, talk about emotions, not only objectively, but also empathetically. And I know the few males that I see in my environment have that. They have that compassion, that visible compassion and visible empathy, whereas it was very selective in my previous life. So to your point, Ramsey, I think it's education. I think it's human resources becoming more of a human resource than a human liability. Yeah. In my experience across many organizations, human resources is all about protecting the company, which I totally agree with. But there also could be an evolution in human resources in my experience, of addressing those things, educating, and that's a big ship to turn.
Yeah. But I think that's really important too. I'm sorry, Sharon, cut you off. I think that's really important too, though, because I think vulnerability, when you can show that, I think male or female, frankly, especially in a corporation, your teams work better together. It's one thing to just manage your team, whether you're showing vulnerability or not, but if you can be a team leader and show that you can communicate, you can work off of each other, you can receive, you can give, you can basically take your team and then work and build leadership amongst the teams, is something that needs to be learned more. I mean, I think vulnerability should be learned or allowed to be, I guess, seen better. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that word.
Industry, that's so important to your customer base. I mean, that's what drives, if you're in a service position, whether it's being a Starbucks employee or Target or wherever, so much of the customer service index is affected by that. When I go in and see, an employee that's just doesn't care, they don't make eye contact, they're just taking your money. That I think is a virus across, the service industry.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. And Michelle, you're so right. It's all in how you say it as well. I saw that comment pop up. I belong to this business networking group, and what's great is that it's not just networking. We sit around a table. It's about a 50-50 male-female ratio, and we talk about how we can speak with our counterparts, with people in our teams and, in business. And so much of it comes down to, like Michelle said, how you say it. And we practice the sandwich. It's like you give a compliment, and then you give constructive criticism. And even for us, like when we do our little pitches and we have our spotlights, it's always about, how can we communicate better, and what does that look like, and how am I saying it that I'm not paying attention to how you're receiving it. And I'm having a little challenge articulating it, but basically it's, when I speak with people and, again, in this networking group especially, we talk about that if I say something and I'm not paying attention and you react differently, and other people see it, it's being able to pull that person aside, not in front of people. It's like, listen, I felt a little off, something wasn't right. Can we talk about this? Or I did a job and, I don't know, my perception is X, maybe it can be done a little bit better. And then giving the person a compliment, telling them what can be improved, and then being able to reinforce that compliment that you're doing a good job. And okay, maybe shift this. Does that make sense? Because I can kind of like
it does. It does. Michelle just said it's important as a leader to create that safe environment, which is so true.
And person aside, especially in doing it in private, not doing it in front of other people. Because that's the worst, right? It's just being totally called out on something and then feeling even worse than you might have originally felt, or not even realizing that you did something and said, holy shit, I was worried about X and he's telling me I did Y.
Yeah. Whoops.
Well, it's mindfulness in your communication. It's just being aware of the other person. And as a business person, we get so scattered and we get into that, oh, sure, yeah. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, I missed that call. And the other person, I found when I do that, and to your point, Sharon, it's like, oops, I zoned out, and the person noticed it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's asking for the feedback. It's, and being willing to receive. The communication is key.
And apologizing, saying, I'm sorry. I've caught myself saying, you know what, I apologize. I had a stray thought and I missed that. Would you mind repeating that? And I'm locked in now. Right. And reset and go, oh,
sorry.
That's re-engaging.
And being like, it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one of the things too is I love how we as individuals right now are talking about how it's our responsibility as individuals within an organization to kind of hold ourselves and each other accountable, to build feedback loops into our operations. But on a larger scale, it's also the responsibility of the organization to create values that it's not just espoused values where they're like, we at so-and-so value our employees and our customer. Like, they actually practice those values down to the granular and cellular level, so that it's just built in that we have those kind of conversations, versus being like, oh yeah, we're all about feedback loops. And the only time you ever get a feedback loop is when it's too late and you're doing your annual performance review and you're like, you could have told me this like January last year, y'all.
Yeah. My friend works for a huge organization, and human resources at his organization sucks. And he's realized like he's had to be the one to bring everybody together, and he manages hundreds of people. And we have conversations about this all the time, because you're right, it has to come from the top down, and you have to be able to have meetings with everybody, the top leaders, the next tier, and do it on a regular basis so that it's all trickling down, so that the employees feel safe and know that they can go to. And if not, there has to be a way for them to go above that person in a safe way that's really beneficial for everybody. It does get complicated, Mark, for sure, when it gets to be a large organization. And Gary, you even saying, with human resources, they should be doing their job, and many times they're not, and they stink, and it's got to start somewhere. So yeah, it is tough, Michelle.
It is.
It is tough, but you're right. It's worth it, because like my friend, his business, like he runs a little business in a huge public company, and in the last 2 years, I mean, he came into a shithole, and he's turned his business around because he's and it was scary at times, and he didn't know if he was, it was going to work. And you want to be successful, you have to go there. You have to really push yourself to go there, for sure.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, this has been fun.
I know. I can't believe how long we've been. I thought I was just going to say hi. If I would have known, I would have put my face on.
I changed the shirt.
This is now becoming punishing. If anyone were playing the drinking game with us, people would be passing out before noon Eastern Standard Time here. If those who are watching in California, like, apologies already. Like, you probably have to call in sick 8:30 in the morning. But I think this is what's awesome about life, right? Like, Robin, you started this show. We had no idea what was going to happen when we woke up.
What happened?
Like, and then Sharon, Gary, and I, like, we're all drawn together now, and I feel this nice little bond. And we did it, y'all. If you didn't experience it, we actually did it in front of a live audience. So, like, we're doing it in front of a live audience. So, like, Michelle, I feel, I don't know about y'all, but I feel connected with Ramses and Michelle and Stephanie, all these great folks that came through. So, like, it's now on the Facebook world for everybody.
And we'll get you our tour dates when we'll be going to Charlotte. And
yes, I love it.
The East Coast.
Yeah.
The East Coast dates.
Gary's hosting, you're hosting, I'm hosting.
Oh, absolutely. I say that why don't the four of us just stay after we go off and, like, make sure that we have our contact information so we can
Sure.
stay in touch, because this really is living life right here, is going with the flow.
That's been great.
This has been cool.
And then also I guess I would encourage Michelle, anyone who's watching, like, if I had more spaces, I'd bring more people up, but, like, y'all are as much a part of this conversation as the four people on the screen. So I'd be happy to email everybody and keep the spreadsheet together, and then let's keep a nice little conversation going. What do y'all think about that?
Awesome.
Yeah, this has been fun and very helpful for me.
It's been great.
It's been great.
Likewise. Matching tattoos next week.
I thought we were doing that tomorrow. No?
Oh, yeah, BFFs forever. Summer 2018. We're never going to break up the band.
Receive apologies.
Receive apologies.
Awesome.
Robin, It's all you. You started the monster.
Oh, I did. Did I?
Yeah.
Well, thanks to you for getting Facebook Live on. Mark's like, let's jump on before the show starts. And I was like, great. And I'm like, I can't get on. Thanks, Mark. Can't get on.
You're so welcome.
Well, thanks to you for obviously hanging out all morning and late last night of chit-chatting about the show. I really appreciate it. And Sharon, nice to see you, and I'll see you in the fall. And jumping on, and Gary, for your questions and jumping on. Nice to see you too. And everybody who's on here, thank you for
spread the word.
Get more. Keeping the conversation, and let's keep it up. It's
hey, do you guys want to see a second show? I say let's do a second show, y'all.
Definitely. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's get under contract. Let's get under contract.
Next time, we're going to be the new Howard Stern show.
There we go.
Next topic. Favorite movie.
But here we can drop any F-bomb or anything we want. So there you go.
Fuck that. I kid.
Thanks, Randy. Come back next week. Next week, we'll figure out when and where, but we will do this. It's been awesome.
Awesome.
Peace out.
Okay,
Peace
so